Hello there, I'm Kaz. Game Freak, stop making Pokemon games.
I'm just kidding, of course. Game Freak can generally be relied upon for making consistent quality releases when it comes to the main Pokemon titles, but they aren't the only games they've ever made, much less the best of the bunch. Heck, they didn't even start out as a game company. Beginning as a magazine turned game company by Satoshi Tajiri and Ken Sugimura in 1989, imagine the high school reunion to that. Game Freak kicked things off with Mendel Palace for the NES. Before they created the money printer known as Pokémon, they were known for making puzzle games like Yoshi and Mario and Wario. That's Yoshi the NES game and Mario and Wario for the Super Famicom, not the actual characters. They also made a few platformers, the two of which were not only two of the best side-scrollers for their systems, but two of the best games on their respective platforms overall. Pulseman for the Sega Genesis, and Drill Dozer for the Game Boy Advance, the latter of which is not only one of the best games that should have been more successful than it actually was, but it also has one of the most oddly shaped cartridges that I've seen for any game. Seriously, look at it, it's like a bronze mushroom. So why bring up these two platforming titles? Well, apparently due to a restructure along the lines of the Google 20% time plan, Game Freak will be developing more games outside the usual Pikachu crew. The first of these new projects to come out of this is the return to platforming, HarmoKnight for the Nintendo 3DS eShop.
So, is HarmoKnight the musical masterpiece of a platformer that we've been waiting for from Game Freak for years? Or is this title completely out of sync? Well, get out your headphones everybody and let's jam out.
The story goes like this. The land of Melodia is under attack by an alien force called the Noizoids, and Doctor Who is nowhere to be found. A rabbit named Tappy and a human named Tempo, did I mention is a rhythm platformer, set out to find someone worthy of the legendary staff in order to defeat them. The story is just there to get you from one point to the next, and while it has its charm, it's entirely disposable. Still a better story than Pokemon Black and White though. There's nothing to really talk about here, so let's move on to what there is quite a bit to discuss about, the gameplay. HarmoKnight is a rhythm platformer in the same vein as Bit Trip Runner. You go through several different worlds with several levels as you collect notes, avoid obstacles, and hit enemies. Your reward for doing so? An enhanced audio experience. By keeping with the melody and the tune of the song, HarmoKnight will grant you more notes and a catchier tune to go along with it. The levels are straightforward and simple, with some secrets thrown in like a bird for a special stage, but nothing significant to note. There's a lot of variety as to what you'll do in these levels, like a cart level, and the extra characters that will play along with your own styles, which is nice, but it interrupts the flow of the melody. Seriously, you might as well have just thrown in this sound effect when you switch them up. Not to mention, having other characters come into the middle of a song is just awkward. Why not just, I don't know, let them have their own stages built solely around their own mechanics instead of forcing them into the middle of the other ones, therefore interrupting the flow of the melody, which is the entire point of a rhythm platformer? HarmoKnight is enjoyable, though it lacks what I like to call a Game Freak gear. What is a Game Freak gear? For those who think they know the answer, no, it is not an unexpired excuse of a Pokemon meant to be a reference to Drill Dozer. In almost every Game Freak game, the design is such that while the average player can get into the game just fine, there's a core mechanic that takes a truly skilled player to utilize it to its fullest and, more importantly, to master it. It's a lot like the formula to the Kirby series, easy to play and beat, but a real challenge to get the most out of the tools you're provided. In Pulseman it was Voltecker, in Drill Dozer it was the Drill Dozer, and do I even need to bring out the EVs, IVs, and other complicated bits of Pokemon? But here, there's nothing that defines itself as the core mechanic. The closest that there is that the levels have different paths to pick, so the song will differ depending on what choice you make, but it's more of a reason to replay the levels on the higher difficulty than anything else. This isn't a major blow against the game, but it is a surprising one. Speaking of surprises, and perhaps I'm missing something, but your maximum health keeps changing for no reason. Sometimes you have 5 hearts, other times you have 7 or 10, which can be rather annoying since you only have 5 or so during the boss fights. On that note, the boss battles are actually fantastic. They do a great job of breaking up the gameplay, shifting the camera to a more dynamic angle, and test your memory and reflexes while being perfectly in sync with the beat. They're easily the best part of the game, and the most challenging aspect of HarmoKnight. Actually, let me rephrase that. They're the most balanced challenge the game throws at you. The rest of HarmoKnight's difficulty level fluctuates drastically. The difficulty is unbelievably inconsistent, which surprised me. I thought it would have been a breeze, but some of these levels might actually take you a couple of tries to beat them. Even more if you want to get to the Great ranking. Speaking of, why is the best rank Great? That's just confusing. However, the game's biggest culprit is not the confusing rankings, the inconsistencies, nor the lack of a core mechanic, but its price. At $15, it is easily the most expensive game exclusive to the eShop, and at a measly 4 hours with little replayability beyond improving your score, it's hard to justify that price tag. Now, Shantae Risky's Revenge was $12 when it first launched on the eShop, and it only clocked in at around 6 hours. But as many of you may know, I gave that game a high recommendation way back in 2010. But here's the difference. At the time of Risky's Revenge's launch, there was nothing on DSi where that could compete with the experience offered, and the quality did match the price tag. Even now, there's very few games exclusive to the entire eShop that I can say match it in quality, much less surpass it. HarmoKnight, however, has some pretty harsh competition. Pushmo and Crashmo, Crimson Shroud, and Muted Muds all offer more for far less. Even Mighty Switch Force, another relatively short title, is more deserving of your time than this one. It certainly isn't as flawed or as frustrating to pick up and play. Even though that I did complain a lot in this review, I still did enjoy my time with HarmoKnight, but between the three Game Freak platformers, HarmoKnight is easily the weakest note. As always, let's end with the presentation. And as embarrassing as this is about to sound, this game is just so adorable! The characters' worlds are chock full of creative design, style, and color that just oozes a charm that only Game Freak possesses. And those comic-like cutscenes are just precious. They actually remind me a lot of Pokémon Trozei. Returning enemies look noticeably injured, and backgrounds are full of detail that further enforces its style as a rhythm platformer. Rocks form guitars, the snap beats in conjunction with the melody, notes form doors on buildings, and so on and so forth, you get the picture. The overworld is simple, but fits the tone the game is going for, being heavily reminiscent of the quirky title Earthbound. As for the sound design, it takes center stage, usually with one main theme per world that's covered several times and a boss theme, but these are wonderfully catchy, infectious almost. Though it's not one of Game Freak's strongest soundtracks, it just makes you smile from one side of the face to the other and just makes you want to groove to those funky beats. Well, the original tracks do, because there's also some Pokemon songs thrown in there because shut up, they made Pokemon. That choice seemed always a bit too obvious to me. Why not put in some tracks from Pulseman or Drill Dozer, your other two great platformers, as bonuses? Heck, throw in Mendel Palace, that could have made some pretty good covers if they completely redid it. But nope, we get the worst songs out of these with such mediocre Poke remixes. Now I want to clarify myself. The songs that they chose were good. The remixes themselves, however, are really bad, which, considering Game Freak's remixes in the remakes of the Pokemon series, is an unbelievable surprise in the worst way possible. They just overlap the original songs with HarmoKnight sound effects and they just don't mix, especially the 4-bit sounds the Game Boy made, or the more recent piece from Black and White. It just makes you want to listen to the soundtracks from the original games which they came from. Which I did. I hesitate to call them overall bad songs, but they pale in comparison to the funky new beats of Elodia. Overall, HarmoKnight wins the most adorable 3DS game in my books.
HarmoKnight is a title that I'm incredibly torn about. I mean, on one hand, I am incredibly glad that Game Freak has given us another quality platformer. But the inconsistencies and the actual price tag for this 4-hour length adventure keep me from loving the game more than I actually did. And I really wanted to love this adorable little platformer with such incredibly catchy tunes. It's incredibly disappointing, but disappointingly good to say the least, earning HarmoKnight a 7 out of 10. If you've played Drill Dozer and Pulseman, or you're looking for a good little bite-sized platformer for your 3DS, this'll fit the bill. If not, check out Drill Dozer and Pulseman. They're much better, not to mention much cheaper. Hopefully this will convince Game Freak to actually make sequels to Pulseman and Drill Dozer, but until that fateful day, game on, my friends.